Welcome to the Fitness Business Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Devonshire, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine. We go way back. He is, well, a little bit about this guy. He's done a lot of things. So he's the author of the book Fitness Profits. He runs yourfitnessmoneycoach.com, where you can find his podcast and coaching. He has been a gym owner for 14 years and also a black belt in BJJ, married with 4 kids. And one of the most interesting things about my guest today is that his gym is up in New York, whereas now him and the family have now moved 1,000 miles away to Tennessee, and the gym runs like clockwork, with systems, with finances, with team members, everything on point. So if you want to learn about how to systemize things, how to make great money, how to manage your money, and have a business that works for you, and have finances that make you wealthier over time, then this is going to be a great podcast. Welcome to the show, Billy Hofacker. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, Justin. Thanks for the intro. That's awesome. I'm inspired. I'm inspired to connect and just to share. Hopefully, I can deliver some value to the awesome listeners.
Yeah, you are a man of my own heart. You're a big believer in systems and automation and processes. And like I tell people, not because we're lazy, it's because we're efficient. And it's because we want to have things working fine. And ultimately, it's the only path to freedom.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in right before the question. I'll just say that, I know sometimes we can hear this, and I did it myself. I know you and we talked last time, it was a lot of this sort of, underneath stuff. Everybody wants the Facebook ad or how to do the Instagram reel. And those things are great. But usually what causes somebody to be successful is not really the outside stuff that you see. It's usually what's going on inside. I'm talking about their character and being able to really, strategize and, work towards goals and use their strengths and systems, I would say, would be a part of that. But I know sometimes, I would hear these terms, you got to have systems, and then you kind of get, you kind of feel insecure. Like, wow, I don't really have that. I don't know if I could create systems. I'm not even sure what that means or how to go about it. So my encouragement is that it's a work in progress. It's like you aren't necessarily going to have it from day one. It takes time to create them, and you're always going to be refining them because things are going to change. We're in the process now of updating some things that have changed, and it's always going to be a work in progress. I can share the story, but I have been on both sides. I don't want to, come across like, have it all together. I certainly don't. But I was in a really poor situation. I was $130,000 in non-mortgage debt, just going back 12 years ago. And now we're in a dramatically a different universe in terms of where we are now. And it's like, you never fully have it figured out. There's always going to be more to learn. There's always, you're always going to kind of feel like you're not there. So, I still feel like that, even though I've had, multiple gyms, coaching business. I still feel like I have a lot to learn, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Okay. So that sets me on so many different conversation threads we can go down, but, okay, I'm going to come back to some of that. So the first thing, though, I think that's going to be on everyone's mind is you're in the position that a lot of the gym owners listening to this either wish they could be at, or maybe don't even know is possible for them yet, where you have a fully functioning, outsourced, profitable gym, and you live 1,000 miles away, right? And so, that's like the dream. That was one thing that in my mind, I never even, there was a time when I go back 15 years ago as a personal trainer, and my mindset was so different that I couldn't even comprehend going on a holiday because one of my clients actually suggested one day, they said, you deserve a holiday. You're always working. Get a holiday and find another coach to look after your clients for a week. And even the thought of that, I thought was absurd. Have someone look after my clients for a week so I can take a break? That is crazy talk. What the hell are you talking about, Margaret? I just couldn't believe it. It couldn't register in my brain. And I think a lot of trainers are probably there or remember that or not far from that. So they think about you and think, wait, how is this guy going to gym 1,000 miles away? How is he enjoying life with his family? How does he have that freedom? And we'll talk about the finances for sure, because obviously finances are a big part of the freedom. But having that system that essentially you don't have a business, it's not a job, it's not even a business, it's an asset for you. An asset that is putting money in your pocket that you have created and put a lot of hard work and hours into, right? But you've now built an asset that works for you. And so, can you tell us a bit about that story of did you ever think you'd be in this position? Was it ever your goal to start with, or when did that start becoming like a reality for you?
Man, that's a good question. My journey has really changed, and I had no clue that I would be where I am now, even just maybe 5 years ago. One thing I will say, I made lots of mistakes, but one of the things I think I did that was good was, as soon as I started way back in 2010, which is when I opened my first facility, I had the mindset of not wanting to be a slave to it. I knew that I wanted to be more on the business side at some point, and I kind of started with that mindset. A lot of people do the opposite. Like I have clients now that they're doing everything in their business, and we're trying to work on pulling them out and having them work more on the business. I kind of had that mindset from the start, which I think did help. And of course, you can turn it around if that's not the case. But just going in with that mindset, I was always looking for good people. And even from my first hire, my second hire, I was like, who can I bring on with me that's going to, deliver the same level of excellence? They're going to have the same values. So I really did pay a lot of attention to that. So I think that's one point. And then another is we had the first facility for like 4 years. It started off part-time, actually. I was a professional martial artist. So I was teaching and training and managing martial arts facilities, BJJ, and that was going well. And I actually started doing my first gym. It was like subleased. It was part-time, and I had previous experience. I had been a trainer for many years, even before that. So it wasn't like I just jumped in out of nowhere. I had a lot of contacts, and I had a reason to think it would work. And it just took off. It did really, really well, even part-time. So that led to me leaving the martial arts job, going full-time, and I had really good success. Things exploded. We just really kept growing. And then about 4 years from the start of the part-time, so now we're like maybe 3 years from being full-time, I decided to open up a second facility, which actually wasn't the plan, which is interesting because I don't necessarily recommend. I'm big on planning, having a vision, which we have now, but this really wasn't something I was necessarily planning. Things had just gone really well. I saw an opportunity, and without sharing the full story, we went for it. It was a calculated risk, which is definitely important. I'm not a huge, I may look like a risk taker to people. It sounds risky, right? I have a gym 1,000 miles away, but lots of what I do is very conservative. I have a lot of backup plans. Here's one little like nugget I'll just throw in because I think it's super helpful, is that I will never, and this is not true for everybody, but for me, I will never make a decision that has the potential to ruin me or my family. So if there's a possibility, a realistic possibility, right? Because anything could happen to anybody. But if there is a realistic possibility this can ruin me, ruin my family, I am not doing it. I don't care how good the upside works. And that's the same case with me running the gym. If the gym doesn't work out, my family and I will not be ruined, which is partly adding to the ability to do that. So I think that's important. And opening up that second facility was a real eye-opener because I was already of the mindset of I really want to lead a team. I really want to work on the business. I really like the business side of things. I do like training, but I always knew I wanted to be a family man. I didn't really want to train those hours. So once I opened up the second facility, already with that mindset, now I have 2 places and I couldn't possibly be at both of them, right? So it's just like, obvious. I didn't have a partner, and I have 6 a.m. sessions at both facilities. So somewhere there's going to have to be some trust that things are happening and things are going well. So I think that helped me as well, starting to realize that, hey, if this works, and that's kind of how it went. It was like step by step. Like, what happens if we do this? What happens if I never even go to this facility? Okay, what happens if? And then all of a sudden you start building up confidence and you start learning and making corrections where you need. And right now, I will say it is going well. I'm going to continue to monitor it. And this might sound shocking, but I actually don't even have cameras, and that might not be a smart thing. So right now, not only am I 1,000 miles away, but I don't even have cameras at the gym, so I couldn't even tell you what's going on by looking right now. Again, I'm torn on that. I'm thinking of adding them, but just trying to illustrate that it is definitely possible. And you hit it on the head. It comes down to systems. It comes down to everybody's journey is different. I don't know that I'd recommend that for everybody. For us, it made sense with our family vision and what we wanted to do. And COVID changed things. So we were going to open up 10 places. That was the original goal. And we were about to do our third. We had two plus a corporate client. So you can call that, a third if you want. But either way, it was, opening up another one. And we then COVID happened and New York was smashed. Most people know we were closed for 6 months, and so that kind of changed a lot of the future. And so just being able to adapt, and I started getting more into business coaching, financial coaching, and that's really the passion now. So I'm spending more time on that, and while the gym is running, it's able to help support what I'm doing now.
So I'm glad you mentioned COVID there, because when we move the conversation towards finances, I think we discussed before, COVID was a time that really exposed most gym owners' lack of financial literacy, or their lack of cash at all.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about how you navigated the pandemic, but specifically not from like a pivot or a marketing perspective, because we've all heard that a million times, but from a financial perspective? What was your financial strategy, or how did the finances contribute? What is it you did with finances going in? How did you decide to manage the money during? Is there anything you can tell us, like, thinking as a financial expert, how did that affect you going in and during COVID?
Yeah, I'll share a few things. So one, and you already said it, that this is probably the biggest thing, is it exposed a lot of people. There's a great quote. It's Warren Buffett, and he says, "You'll see who's skinny dipping when the tide comes up." And that's what happened with a lot of gym owners. They were skating by, and then all of a sudden they got caught with their pants down and they couldn't make it. That's why so many of them closed. So I think the cash thing is huge. That all came from the personal side. I shared about my story coming out of debt. And one of the principles is just pretty straightforward, is, at least 3 months reserves for the business. So that's 3 full months operating expenses, which means that if your business were to go on fire today and you still had to pay exactly what you're paying for the next 3 months, you would have that much in reserves. And for us, it was a good amount because having multiple facilities and payroll and rent and all of that. So it was a good amount of cash. And that really gave us some breathing room. We were able to make some decisions. And that's just, if you hopefully you don't need that money, but there's something powerful about having it. And you most likely, in most scenarios, you won't need it, or certainly won't need all of it, because the chances of your business going from what it is now to zero overnight, there's not many things that would cause that to be the reality. Like, how many things could happen that you would have to still pay full payroll, full rent, full utilities, full marketing spend, but not have a dime coming in for revenue? I mean, it really wouldn't happen. I can't really think of anything that would cause that, because at the very least, you could, you got to be honest with your staff members, and, hey, we have no business anymore, so we can't, continue to pay you. And but it's just that peace of mind and that ability to think clearly, versus not having the cash and just scrambling, and then it's just a downward spiral from there, and then it's bad decisions because you don't have that mental and emotional bandwidth. So I would say that would be number one, was having cash. And I talked to a lot of people, and I talked to some accountants. And I mean, that was definitely the difference between the businesses that made it and the ones that didn't, or the ones that were.
I mean, I think I read the stat somewhere that like 90% of businesses, and then by extension, fitness businesses, 90% of businesses have less than 1 month of cash reserves in the bank at any one time.
Yeah, it's scary. So lots of things could happen to eat that up. So I was like super conservative. So I have the personal reserves, and then I have the business reserves, and both of them include my pay. So I'm like doubled on the cushion. Again, it just creates just a better way for me to live. And second thing is obviously tightening up the expenses. You have to face reality. If the same revenue is not coming in and you still have those expenses, you really have to look at those expenses. One of the things I've learned, and I fell to this, is there are some issues when it comes to expenses, and that's a lot of times I'll share both. So one is when things are tight, oftentimes people cut the wrong expenses. And when things are really good, meaning that, there's a lot of fluff, you are much more hesitant to get rid of expenses that you really don't need to have. When you're super profitable, you're paying yourself, you have extra, it's like you don't really have the incentive or the motivation to really look at things. So I would say that would just be another really good piece of advice to take away here. And that's, regardless of how you're doing, and maybe even especially if things are going well, to really pay attention to those expenses, paying. And again, when I say that, I'm not talking about, cutting everything. I'm just talking about looking at that, making sure that you have expenses that make sense for your business, and they're, adding to the experience, or they're an investment, meaning that they're causing you to grow either personally or for your business. And, but looking at things like subscriptions and things that you're really not even using, or that you don't need, and looking at that. And, then being on, like, you also like, we know payroll is too heavy for a lot of gyms. I've seen a lot of gyms where they really aren't in a position to have this full-time trainer. They have a full-time trainer and they don't even pay themselves. I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. And, you see lots of things like that. So I think really looking at that. And during COVID, that kind of worked out for us. We had one guy who was a full-time guy. He quit right before COVID. So that really helped us. But then some of the others were part-timers. And yeah, I tried to do my best, to take care of them. But after a while, it's like, I can't pay you for 6 months on an hourly rate that you're literally not working. So, just kind of common sense on that. You have to take care of the business. The business is like a baby and you got to take care of it. So looking at that, I remember one time during COVID, we were totally shut down, and my administrative assistant, she would like order things on Amazon, but I have to approve it. And one time she was ordered, it was only $30, and she was ordering ink, and like, we had enough money, we could afford $30, but I denied it. I'm like, listen, I was like, we don't know what's happening here. We're literally not using the ink. I mean, that's not a priority right now. And it might sound silly to people, but it's really just a principle of making those sound decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I think, one thing I always look at is a lot of gym owners don't tend to listen to this advice that much. If they say, yeah, I could run down my P&L and I can save $30 on ink once a week, and you kind of think, well, if I say I could save $500 a month if I really wanted to, but the desire isn't there. And then that's usually when I flip the switch and I say, yeah, but 500 saved could be 500 reinvested. So we say, for example, look at your marketing, right? How much are you paying to acquire a customer right now? And if they're paying $100 to acquire a customer that's worth $1,000 in LTV, then it's like, okay, so now if you cut down the $500 you're spending on the stupid ink and put that into marketing instead, you could turn that $500 saving into another 5 clients and $5,000 this year. And then suddenly they kind of can flip the switch and kind of, oh shit, yeah, I need to. I would just tack that on to gym owners. Like, don't just look at just the saving. It's look at what you could be investing that money in instead.
Absolutely.
Pay to your staff, pay bonuses, like give $50 to a team member, and they'll work better for you tomorrow. Anything.
100%. So Benjamin Franklin was America's first millionaire, and he said, "Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship." That's coming from Ben Franklin. So
great one. So when it comes to personal finances, right?
Yep.
I'm a person. I'll admit that as much as I've had my business finances dialed in for quite a while, I then tend to struggle on the personal finances front.
Yep.
And I have no money. I don't have much problem making money, but I also don't have much problem spending money. When it comes to
Hmm.
the business, I'm a tight ass because I'm sticking to budgets. I'm looking at all my metrics and everything. But in my personal life, then, my personal wealth, my personal finances were something that took a lot longer for me to really take seriously. And so, what advice would you give to me and others, whether they're married, single, to better leverage their own personal finances to not put as much stress on the company, or even some tips of what you would do with your payments or with your company money, ways that you could maybe leverage it for more personal benefit in the future.
That's good. So one of the biggest issues when it comes to fitness business owners and personal finance is the owner needing or thinking they need too much money from the business. That's why it's so important to determine on the personal side what you need to earn. It doesn't matter how much money you make, you can always spend it all. So, you see the typical example is the owner is pulling out money to go out to steak dinners, and they just don't have the type of business that can really support that, and they end up going out of business. There's this stat, I think it's like 82% of businesses go out of businesses not because they're not profitable, but because they run out of cash. And that's what happens. They don't understand the difference between profit and cash flow, two totally separate things. Your profit has nothing to do with how much cash you have. You can be really profitable and have no cash. And like, oh, how does that happen? And that's how usually the cause of that is the owner not having a plan for themselves on the personal side, or needing too much, or thinking they need too much. So I'm not trying to be like the fun police, but you're making $30,000, but you have an $800 car payment. Like, it's going to be really hard to make that work. So some of the basic things on the personal side, as it relates to the business, I always like to take clients through an exercise where, and it's going to be different for different people. So you may be you have a partner who brings in an income that's contributing to the household, or maybe not, or you may have more kids, or you may have a higher cost of living where you are. But looking at that and determining what does a basic living wage look like for you. And I sometimes talk about different levels. Like, I mean, there's a spectrum. It's just like anything. So I've seen gym owners where they have a business that they don't pay themselves anything. I see other gym owners where they randomly will just pull money out of the business, but there's no rhyme or reason. I've seen gym owners pay themselves something, but it's not enough. It's not consistent. I always like to let's go to the next level. If you're not paying yourself anything right now, I'd rather see you pay yourself $100 a week. That's automatic and consistent. And then we can kind of go from there. But ultimately, and as soon as possible, we want to get to a point where the business is paying you predictably an amount that you can live on. And I'm not talking about living in the lap of luxury, but you're able to feed yourself, feed your family, you're able to clothe yourself, you're able to pay your rent or your mortgage, you're able to pay for your transportation. And then, yeah, as things progress, you can do a little more. This is kind of what I did, over time. It was like, okay, now let's pay ourselves a little bit more so that we can, invest a little bit. We can save for a vacation. We can save for some other things. That would be a great place to be. Those are some great benchmarks and great goals for a business owner. And then, over time, we talk about taking profit distributions and doing even more. And there's ways to sort of systematize all of that. But I think as a first step, this might sound elementary, but I want to make sure that people are getting this, and that's completely separating the business finances from the personal finances. Your business should not be the same. So basically what I'm saying is you should not be going and buying like something for your house that's
Netflix
unrelated.
Subscription shouldn't go through the business.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a really good way to be disorganized and not be productive with it. And your personal is your personal. So separating things as much as possible would be a good first step for people. And then from there, it's figuring out what is that living wage that you need to make. And then once you have all that squared away and you know what's coming in, you know what's going out, it's that dreaded word that could be really exciting. You know the word, right, Justin? Starts with a B. It's
Budget.
it's a yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah. So I for a while I stopped calling it that. I would call it a spending plan. But the reality is, I know a lot of guys follow Jocko. Jocko says that discipline equals freedom. And it's the same thing with our finances. Discipline equals freedom. You think that being on a plan is going to restrict you. Oh, but then I can't buy my Starbucks and I can't buy this and I can't buy that. No, what a budget does is it allows you to live according to your values. You decide where that money goes. The problem is most people never decide. So then they don't know, that disappears. They don't know where it went. It's like that. It's like it just leaks through the bucket. You want to tell your money where to go rather than to see that it's not there. And the way you do that is by telling it where to go. You're assigning a place for those dollars to go. And it's really as simple as that. I make $5,000. Okay. 1,500 is going here. This is going there. And then a budget is only as good as the level that you track it. So you want to make sure that you're tracking it and you're living according to it. Maybe getting some accountability if you can is going to be helpful. If you have a partner, it's communicating with them. But those are some of the basics that really produce dramatic results over time. Because I'm telling you, I've worked with so many people, and there's never been a person I worked with that didn't have leaks in the bucket, that couldn't have been doing a lot better with a little bit of attention, a little bit of intentionality. It's just a matter of being, of course, being disciplined, deciding that you want something better, and taking those steps towards it.
Okay, great. And then one kind of last question then is, I think would be a good one for gym owners to know is, what are, let's say, the top, 3 to 5 financial metrics or KPIs that you look out, when you look at the dashboard of your business? What are some of the main top metrics that are non-negotiable for you to know the health of the company?
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of like two sides to it. There's sort of like the business side of leads and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm talking about the like financial metrics rather than
That's what I figured. Those drive those, of course. But on the financial side, some things that I want to be looking at is I do want to look at total revenue per member. I do want to be looking at total revenue. I do want to be looking at revenue per whatever. Like, let's say you have like different programs or different memberships. You want to see what each one is doing. I think that's good to look at. You want to look at cash. That's probably the big one that gets neglected. So tracking your cash. And it's a simple thing, but what happens is before you know it, it's not there. And number one rule in business is
cash, like your standing cash position, you mean?
Yeah,
like how much
exactly.
is there right now? Yeah.
Yeah. How much is there? And what's happening over time? So, I mean, it sounds so basic, but let's say you have $10,000 in your account and you're losing $2,000 a month. You can safely say that in 5 months, you're out of business. Yeah. It's good to know that, right? It's something you probably want to know before that month 5 hits. And a lot of people they don't pay attention to that. And of course, looking at your net, your profit.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So, what do you think people should do from here if the Fit Pros they really decide, okay, yeah, I need to get the finances dialed in. What's the good next step for them to do if they want to learn more? Any resources you recommend, or how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'll give 2 options depending on their situation. So let's say you're somebody and you're like, I just want to kind of dabble. I kind of want to learn more about, some of these things and, look at some different free resources. I would say you could check out the podcast, Your Fitness Money Coach podcast. It's on all the platforms. You could also just kind of connect with me on social media, on Instagram at Billy Hofacker. But if you're listening, you're like, man, like I really want to dial things in. I want somebody to give me that support, that accountability, the guidance. Definitely just reach out to me and we'll hop on a short call. There's no charge, but just kind of get a feel for where you're at and how I could possibly help you. And there are some really good next steps from there. But let's first decide on what those, what that looks like.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll have to do it again sometime, and because we can talk, about finance and systems all day long. But closing remarks from me, guys. Finances. It took me a while to learn this. Well, it takes you a while, not so much just to not only to learn the finances, but I think it takes a while for you to get to the point of maturity to realize
Yeah.
how critical it is. And it's one of those things, just like vision and core values. It's one of those things I think that a lot of gym owners believe, like, tracking finances and vision and core values. That's what the big companies do. I'll become a big company and then I'll look at that stuff. And you don't realize that you need to track that stuff and get the finances dialed in to become the big company.
Jesse, I have a good analogy for that. I love that. So that's like saying this might hit home with some of the fit pros. That would be the equivalent of saying, I'm going to work out when I get in shape.
Yeah, exactly. And another way I put it, just to kind of keep the metaphor train going, what I tell guys is that eventually at some point you start to realize that the numbers make all your decisions for you. Like you can't do anything. Most fit action, the numbers determine what you need to do. So like someone asked me before, they're like, should I, my business is in this position, I'm doing this and this, should I hire a coach?
Good.
And I'm like, it doesn't matter. The question is, can you afford to hire a coach?
Yep.
If you can't, doesn't matter if you should or shouldn't, the numbers let you know what you can and can't do.
So good. Yeah.
It's like, and so it's like telling people, what most of us do is we will take actions, and then if we track the finances, we're then doing it reactively to see, did that work? Which is going back to the metaphor, is like telling your client, hey, go and eat whatever you want this week. And at the end of the week, then we'll track your calories and see if it was enough.
Yep.
No, it's not going to work out so well.
That's what I like. And we didn't get a lot into it, but that's what I like about like setting up these systems. I have a lot of fit pros I set up with percentages. They're paying themselves a percentage and they're doing like the profit first kind of stuff. And it's so powerful because, like you're saying, it makes those decisions. I had one guy recently, he's like, hey, I'm thinking about a second location. I'm like, all right, well, let's look at your cash position. This is, you don't have a full emergency fund for the one business you have X amount in credit card debt. No, like those numbers are telling you that is not the next move for you. And it really is. It's a beautiful thing because we're really emotional and it can be fickle, right? It's like I can get excited one day and think I need to open up another location where it's like, man, I got like 50 grand of profit like sitting right here that I can tap into.
Yeah. So just goes to show we can go deeper on this. But guys, check out Billy's stuff if you want to learn more about this stuff, and you do need to learn more about this stuff. We all do. So it's been great having you on. Thanks so much for dropping the knowledge. And we'll get all those links below.
Thank you, sir.